Hi everyone, welcome to the Immigration.ca live stream series. My name is Andrea and I'm here with immigration lawyer Colin Singer. Colin is managing partner of Immigration.ca in Canada. Today we're going to start off by discussing some recent developments in Canadian immigration news, followed by some questions that we received from you. As always, we love hearing from you, so please do feel free to communicate with us in the comments below. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're going to be speaking for about 15 to 20 minutes with regards to the latest developments in the immigration news. And if you have any friends that you find might be interested in this live stream, please do feel free to share it with them. Well, Colin, should we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Well, there's been some very interesting developments that have taken place in the industry in the last week. Perhaps one of the interesting topics that came to our mind was that the levels of immigration to Canada were perhaps the highest in close to 100 years,
Exactly.
a little bit more than 100 years. The Canadian government admitted to Canada 320,000 immigrants during the period June 1st, 2015 and June 30th, 2016. It represented a 33% increase from the previous year when in 2014-15 there were only 240,000 immigrants admitted. It was the lowest at that time in a 15-year period. The most recent numbers show a very big increase. People are definitely remarking at how this particular government has brought in so many people. But of course there's a caveat. It comes on the heels of a really low number the previous years. And it perhaps signals that this particular government, which came in on a mandate based on immigration, that they're going to bring in a healthy number of managed immigration in the next few years. And our population, interestingly enough, increased to over 36 million. A large percentage of the new population increase, which was 400 and some thousand people added to the population, is accounted by this very healthy number, this record number of immigrants. And why is that?
I mean, well, basically, Canada is an aging population, so we do need immigration for economic growth. So therefore, I mean, it's essential that we do have newcomers to Canada to assist us in reaching this goal.
And the difficulty that our policymakers are facing is that the over age 65 now comprises a larger portion than what we call the younger age, under age 15. This is, it happened for the first time last summer, but it's a trend that's going to continue. Our net labor market growth is now predominantly based on a healthy number of immigration. Senior citizens are growing. And so this particular government is looking to bring in more immigrants, but managed.
Exactly, and they plan on increasing immigration levels over the next 3 years, but obviously managed, I mean, bringing in skilled workers, for example. So, I mean, the target, they set high targets, and we seem to be on target.
And so for 2016, what we've already covered in the past in our writings, and today's topic is one in which you can find more details on our website under Immigration News, September 2016. But what's interesting is that it comes on the heels of an interesting article that immigration has traditionally been criticized for driving down wages.
Yes.
This was an American initiative that came out through the writings of a very well-known economist in the U.S. And he has written time and again that immigration drives down wages. And it's just not true, according to many, and according to a very interesting study, and this is our second piece today, in which we call Immigration Myths Busted, in a comprehensive new report. And this report is U.S.-based, but talk about it for a second.
I mean, well, this report, I mean, it debunks the myth that immigration will drive down wages. Actually, it's proved that in some cases it actually even elevates wages. I mean, it brings also, it's better for the economy, it's good for goods and services, and it's good for the real estate market, it increases entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and these elements are discussed in this report. It was conducted by the U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. The authors of this report include an individual who is an economist at the famous Cornell's School of Industrial Relations, and they have documented many benefits of immigration that help economic growth, innovation, entrepreneurship. I wonder whether this particular report that came out very recently, I wonder if in some ways the industry researchers were talking to each other, because this Canadian report that came out earlier this summer, in which it showed the benefits of immigration in terms of
for example, education. It's also proven that the children of immigrants do succeed more in school than those of Canadian-born parents, in the sense that there are high rates to graduate from high school and go on to university, for example.
Right.
That's one of the main topics.
One of the main, and basically this report from Canada that came out, it was in March 2016. We covered it on our website for the March news articles. But that report, called Immigration, Business Ownership and Employment in Canada, highlights and documents how immigrants have a higher percentage of business owners than Canadians. So, which in theory would be good for the economy.
Exactly, yes.
You have immigrants who are coming to Canada and have a higher percentage of business ownership than Canadians. So you've got, as you pointed out correctly, that the children of immigrants are having higher graduation from high school rates than Canadians. You have also a study shows, so this Immigration Myths Busted, a U.S. publication, I think for the first time in such an overwhelming way, shows that no, immigration does not drive down wages necessarily. I think what really this all shows, if you calculate the costs of immigration, it has a neutral effect. There is cost in bringing people to Canada, but it's the human capital benefit that the economy will receive over a fairly long period of time. So you need immigration. From a Canadian perspective, we now have empirical evidence that shows, and there are Canadian naysayers, and I won't even ingratiate them by acknowledging who they are. They know who they are, who continually write, former government employees who left the government 30 years ago and continue to write negative commentaries on how immigration harms Canada. But the latest numbers from Canada and now from the United States are overwhelming, that there are many benefits to immigration. And really what's alarming is that the working age population in Canada is increasingly being made up by immigration.
Exactly.
And the Canadian portion of our labor market is falling steadily. And so there's this storm that's developing. Policymakers have raised alarms, and the government is listening. And what are they doing about it? I mean, they're
conducting lots of polls. They want to see the Canadians' view on immigration, and from the results of the polls, Canadians are very open-minded, especially with regards to skilled worker immigration.
So there is this third piece that we've covered on our site, and again, today's topic is a review of some really interesting developments in the immigration industry during the past 2 weeks. And we've kind of streamed this theme together during our 15 to 20 minute segment that we're going to cover today. But the third piece talks about how there are studies being done. The Canadian government is listening. And I think what they're trying to do is ensure that their policy plans do not ignore what Canadians are saying.
Exactly, yes.
And it's not going to be, it's not going to be such that all Canadians favor a massive amount of immigration. That's not what's happening.
It'd be like that with any country. I mean,
Sure.
You can't have 100% on one side, for example.
Right.
But I mean, Canadians do favor, immigration, for example. I mean, they have an open mind, especially when, immigrants wish to integrate. They would like to learn the language, they join the workforce, they participate in community activities. I mean, Canadians have a very open-minded view on this.
They seem to have an open-minded view, and the takeaway from all of this is that the government is listening. They're putting in plans to bring in an elevated level of immigration, but it's managed immigration, so that we get all the bases covered. What are the main developments that the government plans to modify?
For example, they want to change the law so it's easier for international graduates. So once they graduate from a Canadian university, it's easier for them to remain in Canada because, they have Canadian education, Canadian qualifications, and they're ready to join the workforce. So that's one.
Right.
And there's another one in the sense of the family class. They want to make it easier for those to bring their close family members to Canada.
Right.
They want to lower the processing times because processing times in some cases can be quite high.
This has been a blemish on our immigration policies, is that family class spousal sponsorship applications in some areas of the world are taking years. And it was a difficult challenge for the former government, which really, I think it got considerably worse under the former government. But the current government now has to act. It's almost 1 year since they were elected, and they have to act.
Yes.
They can't just be in favor of economic immigration. They are in favor of rectifying these unacceptable long processing times for spousal applications. And I think, we're all hopeful that they're going to do that. What people are hoping is that it's standardized across the whole geographic spectrum, not just Europe and North American processing times, but also in India, China, the Philippines, where, of course, these posts have the highest number of applications. Right. So it becomes difficult for the government to work in those areas because again, this is just insider information in terms of language and I should say knowledge, that the processing missions in those areas are challenged. And the case officers are challenged. But really what the government needs to do is give direction to process family class spousal sponsorship, no matter where you are in the world, within a certain time. It could be 12 months, it could be, in that range. And hopefully they're going to succeed. The overall indication is that Canadians seem to favor the higher levels of immigration, of managed immigration. You've mentioned correctly that they're looking to improve in the next few weeks, we're hoping to see concrete elements of these new changes that they're going to announce. Family reunification, international students.
As well as the technology sector?
Technology sector. So we have
a shortage
in many different labor markets of the country, where Canadian technology companies are forced to wait literally 6, 8, 10 months, which is untenable in the recruitment world. Immigration and recruitment go together.
Exactly.
So if you're going to have an immigration program, it's obvious that it needs to mirror what recruitment it aims to achieve. I've always said that immigration minister is probably one of the, if not the biggest, one of the largest recruiters in the world.
Yeah.
The immigration minister to Canada, that is,
Yes.
bringing in so many individuals. So we have these changes. The temporary foreign worker program, they're planning to...
They'll lift the limitations as well. They're trying to make changes as well with regards to that program to make it easier.
To make it easier, because again, under that former government, we had very harsh and restrictive changes that were put into place. And I think what this government is planning to do is kind of move the goalposts slightly. They're going to make it not, go the other way completely, but to temper down some of the obvious, egregious elements of the program that really do not benefit Canada overall. So, again, the provincial nominee program.
And that's already been taken into effect. I mean, so Atlantic Canada was able to actually accept more immigrants. So that's been actually raised. So, I mean, obviously, we have seen changes. We expect changes, and changes have already been put in place as well.
And hopefully some of the provinces who seem to be lobbying for more numbers, because in Canada, as we all know, the federal government is the largest player in terms of bringing in a certain number of economic immigrants. But immigration in Canada is shared between the provinces, and all the provinces have their own powers, and they all neatly blend in now to the express entry system, where provinces can nominate and how a provincial nominee receives a lot of points. So the government is looking to give some effect and give the provinces more selection of immigrants, more numbers, and we're waiting to see how that's going to play out overall. So those are the three main topics that we wanted to cover today. And perhaps we might move to take on some questions. And
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep. So let's start with the first question.
Okay. All right.
So this one is from Trolls, and the topic is with regards to moving to Canada temporarily and what to do next. So him and his girlfriend are living in Denmark, and they both finished their master's degrees a couple years ago, and they're interested in Canada. So they're particularly interested in Vancouver because they love nature and a city with a good vibe. He runs a one-man online marketing agency and can work from anywhere in the world. So, and basically, there's three things I would like. They want to explore Canada for 6 to 8 months. He wants to be able to continue to work remotely. And, he says he has the financials to support his stay, so he's interested on what kind of visa they do need.
Okay. Without dealing with their nationality, the first thing you mentioned was they are living in Denmark?
Yes.
Okay. And they're looking to visit Canada. What comes to mind is for an extended period of time.
Yes, for 6 to 8 months.
Now we don't know their nationality. Some of these programs that we talk about allow for long-term programs, what we call international student programs, where people under the International Mobility Program can come to Canada. So depending on their nationality, they might qualify for what we will loosely call working holidays. But typically people from a number of countries do not need a temporary resident visa to enter Canada. But when you do come to Canada, I think that these individuals seem to have, again, without knowing their nationality, if they're passport holders or permanent residents of a country that has an agreement with Canada, they may not need a visitor's visa, what we call loosely a visitor's visa. They may not need an entry visa. In such instance, they would be able to come and visit Canada for up to 6 months. And then once they're in Canada, typically individuals could apply for an extension or of time. You could apply inside Canada if you're from a country that doesn't need a visa formality to enter the country. You would be given 6 months. and you would be able to extend your stay in Canada. If you were interested in staying for a year, perhaps you might change your mind and want to work in Canada. We have the International Mobility Program, under which there are a number of programs based on country that are participants in this agreement, and they would be able to work for a 1-year period. But those visas go very quickly. So, and if you are from a country in which you need a temporary resident visa to visit Canada, then you would need to, of course, document what your purpose of visit is, how long you want to visit, and in such instance you would have to prove other elements, including that you do not intend to stay permanently.
Right.
So I think, without knowing their nationality, if they're planning to visit Canada, it seems that, again, if they're from the visa-exempt country, they'll have no difficulty getting a 6-month entry. And it's not formally stamped in your passport when you come to Canada. Sometimes they'll mention must leave, and they'll put a 6-month window. If they're not, and it's not an automatic that you get 6 months. You have to have at least satisfy the examining officer that your purpose would lend itself to a 6-month window. So it requires a bit of a verification on what your nationality is, what your purpose of visit is, but for many individuals there's a lot of options.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Colin. So that brings us to the next question. It's from Macromegaly. He wants to sponsor his wife from Africa. He's a Canadian citizen and studying medicine in the United States without any income. He wants to know how he can meet the income requirements needed to sponsor his wife from Africa to Canada.
Okay. Well, listen, all these applications are done online, and you don't have an income requirement to sponsor a spouse. Of course, you want to make sure that there's no inadmissibility issues. You want to make sure that the Canadian citizen is, did you mention they're in a particular, where are they located now?
He's located in the United States and she's in Africa.
Okay. If he's located in the U.S., there's an interesting element to this fact pattern, and that is the Canadian authorities will want to be sure, because one of the conditions of sponsorship is that you intend to reside in Canada.
Yes, right.
So if you are working in the U.S. and you want to Canadianize your spouse, which is something that, of course, it's quite reasonable if you're a Canadian, and South Africa being a country in which it's very, you need a TRV to come to Canada. So to even visit Canada, you'll need to apply for a TRV. But to sponsor under the family class spousal, the Canadian citizen who's living in the States will want to show evidence that he or she, well, he is going to permanently reside in Canada.
Right.
In some areas of the world, the Middle East, for example, there's a lot of policy that's been put into place where an individual will have to actually show that they're leaving their job. Yes. And that they're tying up their anchor. They're breaking their anchor, let's say in the Middle East. I don't think the U.S., the Canadian counterparts are going to be that harsh with someone who's in the U.S., but it wouldn't surprise me. And so therefore, it's important that you have evidence that you're going to live in Canada, and that's the main takeaway. And income is not an element of assessment. So if you don't have the income to sponsor, that is not a bar in itself.
Right. Okay. Thanks. So this moving on to the third question, that is from Canadiga. It's regarding the financial documents for a visitor's visa. So he's applying for a visitor's visa for his grandmother. He submitted a letter of invitation to her that she can submit with her application. He wants to know how he can send his financial documents to support her application directly to the visa office. The reason being that he does not want to disclose his financial information to anyone except for CIC, the Canadian government, and his grandmother is elderly.
Okay. Well, most of these applications are now done online. So when you make your application, you're submitting them directly to the assessment center, and it's done online. So you don't have to worry about how it will be submitted and such. but it's not, you can't expect to get this documentation back. So you want to be sure before you submit this documentation when it comes to, you're not really, the issue of receiving your documents back, it doesn't come into play, and in terms of who's going to know is really not an issue, because you're really dealing and transacting with the Canadian authorities online only.
Perfect. And we have time for one more question.
Okay.
It's from Mauricio35. He says, I am in the process of finding an employer to obtain an LMIA worth 600 points. I'm afraid, as in order to get the LMI approval, it needs to be proven that no Canadians are available to fill the position. Could you please explain?
Okay, well that's an interesting question, and that is, it goes to a number of things. First of all, if you want to work in Canada on a work permit to work for a Canadian employer, you need what's known as a labour market impact assessment. And if you're applying for immigration on a permanent basis to Canada, under the express entry system, well, we all know that getting an employer lined up and suited to sponsor your application and obtaining a labour market impact assessment, an approved one, brings an additional 600 points to the overall picture. And this individual raises an interesting concept in that one of the elements is that the employer must prove that they have canvassed the labour market. And the test is not that no Canadians are available. The test is that the employer cannot find any Canadians. Yeah. And that's an important nuance, because the labour market in Canada is so fragmented. There are so many labour markets. And so what the Canadian authorities do is they ensure that an employer has advertised the position. Right. It's disclosing the title, the salary, all the working conditions, and that this advertising process is for a significant period of time. It was 2 months. 1 month probably is where the new rules might come down to. Depends on the type of occupation that we're trying to fill. But the test is not that no Canadians are available, it's that the employer cannot locate a Canadian. Now, the wages that must be advertised does not compel an employer to pay the highest wages possible.
Exactly.
It has to be a wage that's within the range of normal wages. Mm-hmm. So let's take a position where if a Canadian, an average wage for a particular position, perhaps a Canadian may not be available, but it doesn't compel the employer to pay the maximum wage. We don't have to have a bidding war where it drives up wages and then there'll be a Canadian available. What really the employer must do is advertise, and it's very conceivable that yes, there may be Canadians available, but at that particular snapshot in time, the employer cannot locate suitable Canadians, and the word suitable means who are willing to take the job at the reasonable salary that's being offered. Right. So, the labor market is a very dynamic one. And at any given time, there are people who may be available, who may not be available. But the employer, again, the test is not, because it sounds like a scary test to an outsider, that an employer is, well, there's lots of Canadians available. I mean, we do have an unemployment rate of 7%, but in some areas of the country, the unemployment rate is 4.2%. Depends on the occupation and sub-labor markets. And I'm not talking about necessarily the farthest reaches of the country. So this LMIA, that's very important, and that some of our clients are receiving through our own efforts because of the services we offer under the Express Entry, is because all of our clients do receive excellent employment search consulting assistance. All of our clients receive that. So the test that we work with employers, and we allow them to understand, and we help them understand, is that you don't have to pay, you don't have to go into a bidding war. And it's very conceivable that on the one hand there may be Canadians available, but at that particular moment in time, there aren't Canadians to fill this position that's being advertised. And that becomes a much more reasonable standard
Yes.
and more plausible in the face of a 7% unemployment rate across the country. But again, each sub-labor market has its own challenges.
Right.
So I think that would be how I would approach that particular.
No, I agree. So I guess that, I mean, we've covered our topics.
Okay.